Let's take care of some business first of all.
Right.
We had this interview set up before a big announcement that
That's
came
right.
in this week. But tell me a little bit about Polk Stanley's merging with the Wilcox Group. What does this do for you guys?
Well, it gives us capabilities. They're very strong in healthcare and upper education. We're very strong in corporate, nonprofit, and lower school education. And it makes us a more well-rounded firm. We're real excited about it. We've been working with the Wilcox Group, and by the way, Wesley Walls is one of my best friends, the president of the Wilcox Group. We've been working together with them on UMS, all the major expansion out of that campus. We joint ventured to do that work. And we've worked together for, 6-7 years now, and it's been a wonderful experience for us. And they share our values of how we treat our clients, how the work, the product is more important than us. Every building that both of our firms have designed have been about the people we're working for. And in the end, because in the end, that's what's remembered, and how well you treat your clients. It just gives us a broader capability to tackle any kind of project in Arkansas.
I think this is all part of your plan for world domination, or at least downtown Little Rock domination, because you mentioned the UMS projects. People will probably not know who all the architects are that design some of these buildings,
Right.
but the Arkansas Studies Institute that we're in, the Little
Right.
Rock Chamber building, the Axiom building, the Heifer project, and I'm leaving plenty of them off. But so this is part of your plan for taking over the world?
Well, I think it's just our plan to make a living right now. But no, honestly, we've thought about this a lot, and I've spoken about this. In a generation's time, the architect is usually forgotten, but the building remains, and the place that you create remains. And we just want to leave this place. And I've got 2 small children, and every project I bring my children to the job site. We put on our hard hats, and they think they're helping me build and design and do things like that. But it kind of comes home to me that, look, we're leaving this world to our children, and that's where we've really developed this attitude of sustainability in our work. That we've got to leave this place better than it was before. So, names come and go, firms change. The names of firms change, but the work is what really matters and what you leave behind.
You had to be one of these kids growing up that either was heavily involved with Lincoln Logs,
Exactly.
Legos, Erector set.
Exactly.
What was your
Lincoln Logs?
Building place?
Lincoln Logs was it, and I had no idea that Frank Lloyd Wright's son invented Lincoln Logs. The great architect's son invented Lincoln Logs. But that was it. I tell you, I grew to love construction architecture. My mom was an office manager for a small construction company in my hometown of Paris, Arkansas. My dad was a sales rep for a Eureka Brick in Clarksville. So I was around construction all along, but when I was about 5, my grandparents' house there in Paris, they built an addition to it, and the carpenters were out there, and I remember I just pestered them to death. I was just out there all the time. My grandmother got me a little tool set. I was one of them. But from that point on, I wanted to be a carpenter. I wanted to be a builder. I wanted to be something. And later on, I just developed the love for drawing, art. And in school, I was the guy doodling, and always getting in trouble for doodling. And I figured out a way to make a living for what I used to get in trouble for.
Well, Reese, tell me a little bit about you. Obviously, you developed this passion for drawing, and architecture has changed a lot, particularly in the last 20 years.
Right.
We talked about sustainability a little
Right.
bit, and that's just a growing trend in the business here. What hasn't changed about architecture in the last 20 years?
That's a good question. I would say, what hasn't changed is the fact that that it's always going to be there. Our cities have been developed, say Little Rock, over the last 100 years. This building that we're in right now was built in 1883. There's always going to be a need to build and a need for architecture. The thing that has changed dramatically is the economy changes the way we build. The need for buildings, you look at each generation. Years ago, buildings were built to allow in sunlight. And like my grandparents' house was built in an east-west direction on top of a hill in the late 1800s so they could capture the breezes, capture the sunlight. The porches were located based on when you could use the sun to do your work versus not want the sun. And during the 50s and 60s, we got away from all that because we didn't need it anymore. We had air conditioning. We had the technologies that were developed. But we had all the fuel in the world that we needed. So in the 70s, we had a moment of fear. And then this idea started coming up. Well, what are we going to do when the fuel runs out? And then in the 80s, we got more fuel, we got more resources, and we kind of stepped back a little bit. But it planted the seed. And so the sustainability seed has been there for 30 years. But within the last 10 to 15 years, it's really taken off, because now you start to see the Middle Eastern companies or countries starting to be worried about not having that resource that they've had for years. Some of the largest sustainable projects in the world are in the Middle East right now because they know that their resource is running out. So in architecture, what hasn't changed is just the need for buildings, the need to shelter, and the need for businesses and places. The materials have not necessarily changed dramatically. We're still using brick, we're using concrete, we're using steel. We're all those major things that the United States was built on, the industries that the United States was built on, but we're using them in different ways now, harvesting the environment a little better.
My sense is that the sustainability of the green movement has re-energized architecture.
Oh, absolutely.
It has brought about a rebirth of people interested in architecture. Do you
Absolutely.
agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, when we first started talking about the Heifer International headquarters with them, this was in 2000. This has been 9 years ago. They're a sustainable organization. Everything they do is about sustaining life. And they mentioned to us, we really would like for our building to reflect what we do. We have to do that as a nonprofit. You know, our mission has to be reflected in how we live. So back then, the LEED and the different categories for how sustainable you're building were kind of in their infancy. And so we sort of grew and learned as the process was going on. And what we found out is most of our buildings were doing all the right things and letting in natural light. Our firm's really based on bringing in natural light, making the environment, bringing the outside in. And because, you know, studies have shown in schools, in corporate headquarters and business offices, the more light you have and the cleaner the air is, your productivity's higher, your test scores are higher, and absenteeism falls. And we've been able to track all that at Heifer. They're tracking every bit of that, and it's all proving to be the case.